October weather really creeps me out. The days, they get shorter and shorter. The nights get longer and darker. Everything's dying. That foreboding October wind starts to blow. Whoosh. It's creepy. It's like it's talking to you. It's like foreshadowing. It's like it's whispering the mysteries of what's to come for all of us. It's inevitable. The death of fall is near and winter's coming. Just creeps me out, October weather. Just everything's dying and it's dark and it feels like Halloween. Just creeps me out. And, even the drive here today creeped me out. I normally come down North 27th. I always park in the parking garage. And it's the long way because you can't turn here, so you have to go down first and then over to Broadway and then over and then back. And so I do that and I'm always like, why do I go this way? And so today I came down Broadway, North Broadway over there. And that just comes right here. And then I remembered why I don't do that. It's the creepiest drive in all of Billings. It's because after the library, you come by the Dude Rancher Lodge. That place is creepy. Bates Motel creepy. It's haunted. It's haunted. You wouldn't find me dead in that place. I'm telling you. It's creepy. It's, I used to go there, but it was the Dude Rancher is what we called it. And we come down North 29 and came in and probably as I lived here, I didn't even think about it. We just came to have breakfast. And so I didn't know that it was anything other than a breakfast spot. Didn't know it was the Dude Rancher Lodge till later. Until that, inevitably, you gotta go to the bathroom. You go over and start poking around and see that long, endless, half-lit hallway with door after door after door after door after door. And all the people that must be behind those doors, and the stories, and the words, and the mystery of what goes on in there. I don't need that, I'm having breakfast. It's creepy. And it's creepy in that kind of shining way. Every time I look down there, I expect that little boy to come out going, red rum, red rum, red rum. So it creeps me out, it's haunted. I know that, and yeah, you wouldn't find me dead in that place, I'm telling you. Now, well, I say that because it's so creepy, but there's one circumstance where I would go back, and that's if I could go, and if I could have breakfast with my best friend, Steve Pearson. Like, under that circumstance, I would go, but that's it, and the only way. But, so let me tell you about my friend Steve. I'm going to introduce you to my friend Steve. He's a legend, and I guess the best way to introduce Steve is to kind of talk about maybe some things he loved and some things he didn't love. And he loved literature, loved liquor, and he hated bullies. So I think the best way to introduce you to Steve is to kind of probably interweave some of these things that really all eventually merge into one, and then our friendship walk through it. But the best way would be bar fights, and bar fights, come on. Bar fights, and two books that he loved. He loved books, and two books that he really loved were Legends of the Fall, and A River Runs Through It.
Right.
Brad Pitt, for those that just go to movies. Okay. So, but a little backstory first about Steve before getting into that, is just like the books, like the characters Tristan and Paul, who were played by Brad Pitt. He was born in western Montana, and he came to Billings, go to high school, and became a bear. He went to West High. He was very proud of that. We'll wear the jacket. He was very loyal, so he was a bear. That was his thing. But he was an athlete, and he played football. He played basketball. He was a really fantastic athlete, and so he was a jock. And this is in the 90s. To date myself, I might have been when I graduated, right there on the wall. But anyways, he was a great athlete, but he also had a lot of other interests. So he was a book nerd and a choir nerd, like my wife. So they call them nerds because, well, she calls herself a nerd, but he was a choir nerd. And he eventually would go into musical theater and wrote a play, and was just super talented, was really into politics, liberal, and he was a hardcore Democrat. My mom was conservative Republican, and so they would meet, and it would be very interesting because he would always remind her that my birthday was August 19th, so he'd call her then, and that's when Bill Clinton's birthday was. So that would be the reminder. And the beautiful thing about Steve would bought her a Bill Clinton book and wrote it and gave it to her. And that, for whatever reason, the newspaper was there. They were taking pictures of some kind of book thing. And so they did a little interview with him, and he said he got it for a friend's mom, which was my mom. But the cool thing with Steve is he could be totally like on opposite sides of ideas. But he would go hug my mom and throw his head back and laugh, and she loved him, and they would just always meet. And Steve had this unique ability to just kind of reach across the aisles with everybody. So, he was, in the nerd world, the geek world, the jock world, and he just was able to do that. And so it was just, Steve was unique that way. And so the way I met Steve, like his dad was he was a son of a preacher man, just like Paul in the story of River Runs Through It. But the way we met, so I kind of knew of him through basketball, but that was it. We weren't really friends. But we met, and our friendship was formed over a bar fight. And so before the bar fight, I wasn't a fighter. Just for a little backstory for me is I wasn't a fighter. I grew up in private schools and small little schools. I was a jock and an athlete too, but just wasn't a fighter. But I found out in Montana you don't have to be a fighter for people to punch you in the face real hard. So I got punched hard enough, often enough to, 2 times, for instance, like I was 15 and in a hotel lobby, and some grown man, hit me so hard I couldn't remember my name. And then coming out of Bible class at Billings Central, I got ear holed. I didn't even see it. My jaw just went, and I lost time. Like I have a vague memory of being at my locker, and then being in the locker room, and then standing with the basketball, and the coach looking at me going, "What is wrong with you?" Because my jaw had just grew. And so I learned that it didn't matter. Like we both got detention together. Like it was just like no one calls cops, and there's none of that. I was like, that was the deal. So I learned that, through a lot of trauma and aggressive men that, guys will just hit you. So I wasn't a fighter, but after Central, so I went to Central for a year, and I was a new guy, and so even though I was a jock, I didn't want to be part of the cliquey jock guys, and so I got, didn't want to be a part of this when you're not, it's just a number thing, it's high school, right? So I went on to go to school in Virginia the next year, went to college, came back, you kind of figure that stuff's done. So I'm at the Lamplighter, which is now Peppers, but that was the spot, and so I'm at Lamplighter, and I never had really friends that, I had a couple of friends, and they were always the kind of geeky, nerdy guys that we never, we were targets, for, if guys wanted to fight. It was always like a 5-to-1 girl-guy ratio, guy-girl at the bar, so it always was going to be fights, because guys would be frustrated, they just want to beat someone up, and I just was the guy that likes to beat him up, So anyway, so I'm at the bar, and these guys from high school are there, and they're yapping, and they were funny guys, and a bunch of them were kind of, comedians, and they were funny, and they'd roast me and dog me and just, I guess bully. I don't like bully, but they just would yap, and they just degrade you endlessly. And I just, I would always stand my ground, but I was always by myself. And so finally I was tired of it, and I was done. I was like, I'm not going to allow this anymore. I'm going to make my stand. And so I went outside. It was the gauntlet, and they were standing out like on the deck. I went out, and I went up to the ringleader, and I was like, I'm done. It's over. Stop it. Like, don't talk to me again. Don't, just leave me alone. That's all I want. Just leave me alone. And or what? He's like, or what? And I said, well, we'll take care of it. And what are you going to do, Corcoran? And so then all his buddies step forward. He just disappears in this massive big football player. And I'm like 155 pounds at the time, so I'm 25 pounds less than I am now. I'm not a big guy, and there's all these dudes. I'm a survivor, so I'm like, okay, this is bad numbers. So I go back inside. And Steve saw this. And like I said, I vaguely knew him, like we might say hi, or, but we weren't, He came over and said, hey, what happened out there? And I said, well, this guy has just kind of been, all these guys for years have just harassed me and berated me. And I said, I'm just tired of it. So I told him it was, done, and I was going to fight him. But, all his friends came and, stepped in. And he just looked at me and he just shook his head. Said, they're not going to jump in. So I was like, boom, out the door, and just shot out of a cannon. And they had already been leaving there out into the parking lot. So I'm racing out of the parking lot. Mind you, I have no idea if he can fight or anything, but I had somebody, someone's with me, So I'm finally not alone. So I run down there, and the conversation starts again, and he just keeps going until the verbal conversation becomes a physical conversation. And I get the last word, and which is good, That was nice. I mean, that's going to happen. You hope that it goes that way. And so it went my way, and which is funny though. In the moment that I was like as he was on the ground, I was like, "Why'd you make me do that?" I was half crying, I didn't want to fight him. And so, anyways, as I go to leave, I find out later what happened was when I came in to fight him, the crowd forms around, and these guys started stepping forward, and Steve just stepped forward and just went. And they all just stepped back. Yeah. And what I didn't know was Steve had a reputation. Steve was like a Picasso of pugilism. And he had speed and power in both hands. And when he hit you, you stayed hit. And so people knew, and these guys, they had bullied a mutual friend of ours, Stephen Fallsdown, and they had kind of bullied him, and apparently while I was gone in Virginia, they had formed a friendship, and he had beat up a bunch of those guys because they wouldn't leave him alone. So they had history, and they're like, and so they all stepped back, and Steve had a reputation. So I didn't know that, which was good. Just got lucky that he could fight. So we bonded over a lot of things, and it was, literature, like I said, and liquor, and he didn't like bullies, and I had long hair, and, that didn't go well in the bars in Montana at that time, and so I was a bully magnet. So this beautiful friendship was formed. And so, the thing, one more. This little alley right here, we got arrested down here too, I'll tell you this right. So, in the hooligans, used to be Casey's Golden Pheasant. And so, was in there, got in a fight, it was packed, and again had a physical conversation with this gentleman. And people started jumping in, and Steve waded in and was just pulling people off. And what would happen with Steve was, it was our agreement was was nonverbal, but I fought my own fights. He never fought for me, but he would step in and break things up so that other people wouldn't jump in. And this particular time, he just pulled people off. There was many times, because this was a reoccurring thing, dozens and dozens of these encounters, where sometimes I would have someone that I would have to fight, and then Steve would fight 1, 2, or 3 of his friends. But I always fought my fight, so that was kind of the deal. So in this particular time, he doesn't hit anyone, he just pulls people off. I get up and see cops, so I decide to run in a packed bar, and I'm knocking people out of the way, and it's hard to run fast through a lot of people. So I get tackled, and it was one of my finer moments to get cuffed in front of, the whole of my peers. But as they're taking me out, we go out into the alley and go to the cop car, and the officers, got me cuffed, and I had long hair down the middle of my back, and I was just, smelled of Jack Daniels and cigarettes and just bloodshot eyes, and just was a maniac. And Steve is over at the other car talking to this police officer, and he's like, getting his statement or whatever. And I don't know why, but I just became like a mafia don all of a sudden. And as I'm getting cuffed and they're putting me in, I look over and I was like, "Don't tell him anything, Pearson!" They slammed the door shut, and I'm looking out the window, and he's standing there just talking to this officer, and he just looks at me and goes, his hands behind his back, he gets arrested too. So the beauty of Steve was he never asked, because it costs money, when you get arrested, and he got an assault charge, and he didn't hit anybody. This time, he didn't hit anyone. But he gets an assault charge, and the cool thing with Steve is he was so loyal, that was just part of the friendship. Like, he was, of course, I'm there. You know, he never asked for anything, but he got a lot of mileage out of it, because that became a running thing with us, was he would, probably hundreds of times I heard him say, "Don't tell him anything, Pearson," and if I dropped him off at the end of a night at the bar, I'd roll the window down and I'd scream out, "Don't tell him anything, Pearson." So he got a lot of mileage out of that. So I think he appreciated that, but Steve, he loved literature, and the two books just really stick out to me because you can see the reflection of your life sometimes through them, which at the time when we read those books and liked those books, you didn't even see it. But has anyone seen Legends of the Fall or read the book? Yeah. Okay, so in Legends of the Fall, there's brothers, and the one brother, Tristan, played by Brad Pitt, he's bar fighter, and he's kind of the man's man, and he drinks and does all that stuff, and so but he's a war hero, and he's just can handle himself. And there's a moment where they're on a ridge, and he's with his dad, played by Anthony Hopkins, and then you should just read the book, but that's a short way. But and then there's a ranch hand, and then one stag who's his native friend. And there's this bear, and they have this perfect shot, this big brown bear, and Anthony Hopkins says to him, he's like, "Take him, son," and he's like, "Damn right." Which, of course, what every Montanan man says before he shoots anything is, "Damn right." Yeah. So he's going to take the shot, and then you see in his eyes that he can't kill the bear. Like, it just, something comes across him. Earlier in the movie, when he was like a kid, he came across the same bear, and the bear had scratched him and drew blood, but he'd survived. So now he gets to exact revenge on the bear and kill this. But he can't do it. And he obviously could, because he's a master hunter and all of that, but he just can't kill the bear. And One Stab, who is the narrator throughout the film, says, "I don't know why Tristan couldn't kill that damn bear." And then he goes on to talk about the native tradition and how when you exchange blood with an animal, that becomes one with you. And that throughout the movies, he's narrating, talking. Tristan would always defend and protect everyone, but things would always, be destroyed around him. And he would talk about it, and he'd say, well, there's nothing he could do. So when something would happen, in the narration, he would say that it wasn't Tristan's fault, it was that damn bear. And so that was Steve, and Steve's bear was addiction. It was liquor. And at first, it was fun, but then it got to a point of extreme drinking, and so that was Steve's issue, was the bear. Now, in the movie, at the end, Tristan goes out he's in the borderland, he goes out in the woods, and he encounters this bear again. And he doesn't have the ability, he doesn't have he has his knife, and there's the moment where he surrenders to the bear, and the movie's over. And so, Steve had that issue with addictions, and he struggled with that, and he became like the leading Las Vegas drinker, for the end, where it was just he would hide bottles everywhere, and he would secret drink even with his friends that he drank with while they were drinking. It was pretty sad. But I went off to chase a girl to Los Angeles, got married, the kids came back, and I killed my bear. After 15 years of addiction, I was able to be free of it. When I came back, we missed like 7 or 8 years where I'd maybe seen him once or twice, but when I came back, our call to talk to him on the phone. But I remember when I introduced him to my wife, I had to tell her later, I wish you would have known Steve, because he's not the same. He's just a shell of who he was. His body started to give out, and I could get 1 or 2 hips replaced, and his mind was so sharp, and he was witty, but that started to fade. The liquor brain started to come, and he would secretly drink, so he was drunk all the time, even if you didn't know. You could the smell coming out of his pores, and so the brain started, to go. He'd still do things, and he was still, so you always had that hope, but it was just, he wasn't, what he was. And so he came to, we were in Billings, and we would go walk out in the great wide open, and that's the place where we would, talk. And, his dad was a Baptist minister and gave him a Bible, so he'd talk about his dad who had passed, and then his brother, and his mother, and he had just his nephew. He had all this death, and so he was really, took that hard, and he was drinking more and more. And so we would talk about all these things, but then he would ask me, he was like, hey, Donnie boy, how'd you do it? Donnie boy, how'd you stop? So, I'd give him all these things that, I did, but then I started to tell him, I was like, Steve, you got to understand, the drinking, and it's a bully. Liquor's a bully, and you're being bullied, Steve. You got to fight back. And I kind of thought that since maybe that would do something for him, because, but he'd been to treatment and had all these options, and, and it didn't, and so he came to my house one day, and it was in the afternoon, and he came over, and he came in, and I started to smell the liquor, and he would come out of his pores, you could smell it, and I was mad. I'm like, you're in my house, like my kids are here, it's like I could go out and talk with you, and you could be drunk. I mean, I prefer it, but, I would do, I'd spend time with him, but I'm like, not in my house. The bear doesn't come in my house, Steve. I was pissed. So we left. I got in my car and I took him home. And on the way, he's still a mountain of a man. He's, 6'2", but he's, 240, and he could end me with one strike. But I was like, kind of berating him like a kid, going, don't ever do that again, ever. Don't ever come to my house. And so I dropped him off and I sent him a text. And the text said, Steve, drinking will kill you. I will not walk that path with you. I love you too much. But if you want to walk a path of sobriety, if you want to get help or treatment, I will walk every step of the way with you. But drinking will kill you, and I will not walk that path. He called, left me a message. We've been friends, 25 years, and he left me a message. And, first time in 25 years, there was something about him, like he was big, but he carried himself small. Like in a good way, in a charming way. Like he would never intimidate you with his physicality. And he would never, ever, joke with me. Like he would joke, he would say things, but he wouldn't joke about physical stuff. And he was funny. He said, rub some dirt in it, and have the old sayings like, if you shit your bed now, you got to sleep in it, And then he would say, he'd joke around, say, I beat you up like a little girl. Never to me. But he leaves me a message. And in the message, he's like, you're so self-righteous, you think you're this, you think you're that, but I'll beat you up like a little girl, Donnie. And he never talked to me that way. Ever. Never threatened me. Ever. And of course it made me mad, but, I knew it wasn't Steve. It was from that deep, dark place inside that bear had come up. It was that damn bear. But I was mad. And then he called and left another message, and the message was, Donnie boy, I'm sorry, man. Sorry, Donnie boy. Donnie, that I don't mean that, man. Donnie boy, I'm sorry. And I knew he was, But then at the end, he kind of stumbled over his words, and I was like, he's drunk again. And that made me so mad that I was like, fine, you shit your bed, now sleep in it. I just ghosted, not going to call him another time, Like I needed some space from it. So, in the book, A River Runs Through It, Paul, played by Brad Pitt, their life plays out, through fishing. And he comes back, and they're walking and fishing, and the whole story is about his dad, who was a minister, and it was about the Bible and fishing. And I love this part. He always said his dad would use the word beautiful. And he said his dad would say, this is set in like the 30s, and he said that was an uncommon thing for a Scotsman to say. For a Presbyterian minister to say, but he would say beautiful. In the story, the brothers, he wants to reach out and help his brother. Norman McLean is the author, and he wants to help his brother, and he tries, and he can't. And the brother is drinking and fighting and has gambling debts, but won't ask for any help. He does everything he can to help him, and then eventually he gets the call. He says, I knew it when the sergeant came to the door. It was early morning that, I knew. So he went to collect his brother's body. He'd been beaten with a revolver and in the head and left in an alley. And then he went to his parents to tell them, And his dad, the minister, was asking questions, and wanted to know some things about what happened. Did they know what happened? And he was like, the police don't know. And like, do you think maybe he fought back? Maybe he just he was getting robbed? Because he didn't want to believe it was from his past, of the things he was doing. Maybe he just fought back. Maybe he just, and he's like, Dad, I don't know. And he goes, the one thing I do know, Dad, is he was a fine fisherman. His dad says, you know more than that. He was beautiful. Goes on to say, it's those we live with and loved the most who elude us. When I got the call, it wasn't a call, it was first, it was a message. I got the message that was a private message that said, are you Don, the one that was Steve's friend? It was from his sister who I didn't know, and so I knew. So I remember I got up and went out and called and got the details out. He was drunk and had fallen and hit his head and died of a massive brain bleed. And so we had the funeral, and after the funeral, went with some of the friends that had come from Arizona, and we went over to the granary, which is where, ironically, a lot of the fights and things happened. But I was sitting there with Mike, and Mike works in social work and is around that. And the parallels of our conversation and the conversation from the book were almost identical. Because in the book, the dad says, is there anything I could have done to help? And the son says, is there anything I could have done to help? How do you answer a question that is a lifetime of questions? So, just like the book, we're sitting there, Mike's like, what could I have done? And he's in the social work, so like he knows people, and knew Steve was in trouble, knew he was, in the ER, knew, if he was checked into, the psych center or anything. And so he knew these things, he was trying to help, and he also knew people that could ask questions, and he was just tore up about it. And he was like, I think that maybe he was jumped. There's rumors he got beat up, he was jumped, and, maybe he was murdered, and there was all of this, and, so whether he was jumped and got beat up, or if he actually fell into his head, or if he just got beat to the punch because he was no longer what he was before, he couldn't live in that world the same way, no matter what, it wasn't any of those things, and it wasn't the fall, it wasn't the brain bleed that killed him, it was that damn bear. In the end of the book, Norman McLean, as he looks back on his life, he says this. He says, those who I knew the most and loved in my youth and didn't understand are dead now. But I still reach out to them. He says, of course now I'm much too old to be much of a fisherman. Of course now I fish the big rivers alone, even though some of my friends think I shouldn't. He said, but like most fly fishermen in western Montana, in the summer when the days are near Arctic in length, I often will go fish until the cool of the evening. And in that half-arc light of the canyon, all existence fades into a being with my soul and with memories and with the sound of the big Blackfoot River and a 4-count rhythm and the hopes that a fish will rise. Eventually all things merge into one and a river runs through it. The river was cut by the world's great flood, and it flows over the rocks, over the basement of time. And on some of those rocks are timeless raindrops. And under those rocks are the words. Some of the words are theirs. I'm haunted by waters. See, Steve didn't die in an hour. And that might have been where he fell, but he was still strong enough to get up and to walk across downtown Billings, heading toward the medical corridor down there, and then he checked himself in, but not to the hospital. He got himself a room at the Dude Rancher Lodge, and he got a key, and he walked down that endless hallway, and he opened the door that led to the other side, and he shut that door. All the things that happened, the mystery remains. But the legend of my youth fell one more time. He fell into bed. He laid his head down and he closed his eyes. And he surrendered to the forever endless winter. See, addiction always looks like Halloween. Addiction is like the seasons. First it's spring, it's beautiful, it's fun. You're frolicking with your shoes off in the grass and there's butterflies and it's new. And then you get those liquor legs into summer, and then you take off your shirt, you're splashing in the water, the sun's beating out, everything's beautiful, you're 10 foot tall and bulletproof and nothing can harm you. And then, inevitably, the fall, and then the winter. Addiction always looks like Halloween. So when I think of that long, endless, dark, dim hallway with door after door after door after door, story after story, people and words, and the mystery of what happened and when. All those doors merge into one, and behind one of those doors is his story and his words. And I'm haunted by doors. The place is haunted and it's creepy, but like I said, I would go back under one condition. If I could sit with my friend Steve Pearson, the legend, the timeless one, if I could sit there with him and have breakfast, I would go back. I know exactly what I would order. I know exactly what I would say. I would order 2 eggs sunny side up, strip of bacon, smiley face. I'd have hash browns, wheat toast, black coffee that I would absolutely destroy with sugar and creamer. And then I would look my friend in the eye, look at him, and I would say, "Don't tell him anything, Pearson!" He'd laugh too. He'd laugh. And then I would say, "Steve, I don't know why you didn't kill that damn bear. But I know this." I would tell him this. "I know this. You were beautiful."